happened with the whole upheaval and uprising of the Black Lives Matter really affected us at home here. And
Yes.
the first thing that we went through actually were my daughters coming and asking me, what does that mean to us? We're not
Yeah.
white. What
Yeah.
does that mean? Right? And it opened the whole topics of racism. And my daughters are like 9 and 12, right? So they are really young. But they were very curious. The 12-year-old felt more of anger, the 9-year-old felt more of fear, lots of fear from what happened. And we started conversations at home about that. What is racism? What does it mean? Why people are seeing each other with the skin color? Because kids don't see that. Kids are just kids together, right?
It's true.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Better Transitions. Today, we will be recording via Zoom. It's during COVID times, and we wanted to still be able to connect with our presenters to be able to bring our weekly interviews. So today we will be interviewing Samar. Samar is a psychotherapist. She's a professor at the Adler University, and she is the founder of the Well Institute. We also want to share with you that Samar is also a TEDx presenter. We will be sharing that link to her TED Talk in the link below. Welcome, Samar.
Just want to welcome Samar here with us. And I hope, you'll enjoy the show as we talk a bit about, what's happening in our climate today, with Black Lives Matter, with George Floyd, and sort of the response and how that has affected Samar and, her sharing with us sort of what we can do, as a Black community, as individual psychotherapists, clients to be able to, move through this transition that we're dealing with right now. Welcome, Samar.
Thank you so much, Tresha. Thank you.
Yes. All right. So I like to start off by just opening it up for you to sort of share a bit more about yourself and to tell us, do you have a transition story as it pertains to this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a therapist by profession, a mother to 2 girls. So we are a family of people of color. And yes, what happened with the whole upheaval and uprising of the Black Lives Matter really affected us at home here.
Yes.
And the first thing that we went through actually were my daughters coming and asking me, what does that mean to us? We're not white. What does that mean? Right? And it opened the whole topics of racism. And my daughters are like 9 and 12, right? So they are really young. But they were very curious. The 12-year-old felt more of anger. The 9-year-old felt more of fear, lots of fear from what happened. And we started conversations at home about that. What is racism? What does it mean? Why people are seeing each other with the skin color? Because kids don't see that. Kids are just kids together, right?
It's true.
So that was very interesting to feel that at home. And it was a very intense couple of weeks. And even talking to friends, there was a lot of tears to see what happened and hear the last words of George before he died. On a therapeutic perspective with my clients, I saw a lot of conversations that opened in the workplace around that. And starting to seeing things that before people took for granted, like the boys club, the white boys club, all that stuff that people took for granted. They started seeing that and seeing how people actually choose to see the pain or just cover their eyes and choose to see like, oh, they're making a big deal out of it. And again, that's a coping mechanism for an ego that is very fragile. That can't handle reality with all its ugliness because it's ugly. That's the reality too, right? So yeah, that's how things opened in our home and what I see in my practice as well.
It sounds like it, as you said, opened conversations for you to be able to sort of share a bit more, like what is racism? Being able to talk to your daughters, almost like you're passing on, I guess, information from one generation to the next and sort of maybe helping them to understand, what this all means. And it sounds like something very similar within your practice, helping people to heal, from this, gain understanding, and again, moving forward as well within sort of this, again, time of grieving, for sure.
It is a very intense time of grieving. It really is. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I would say it seems like as humanity right now, since the start of 2020, we are going through an initiation. And initiations are hard, right? No one likes to go into an initiation. Like, think of all our times when we transitioned, right? From childhood to adolescent, from adolescent to young adulthood, from young adulthood into partnership, into motherhood. Transitions are hard.
Yes.
So initiation as a collective is even harder.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I'm seeing it right now. As humanity right now, we are ready for the next level, right? Remember when slavery was okay?
Yes.
Right now, we can't even fathom the idea. What do you mean that was okay one day, right? It's unacceptable globally now.
Yes.
So I think something similar, we're going through something very similar, that at the beginning it's really hard. There will be lives that are going to go, all that stuff. And then the transformation happened. And hopefully next generation will look back and say, wow, we couldn't believe that that happened one day, you know?
Yes, that is definitely the hope. Like, I know a lot of people, you know, are saying, some are hopeful, but others are not. You know, people are like, we're seeing the same things, similar things that are happening now, were happening then, you know, and a lot of people are feeling hopeless, right? So what would you say to those people who are feeling hopeless? How can they, you know, get through this time?
So I would say hopelessness is one, and helplessness are two of the hardest human emotions, right? When we feel them, there is a sense of despair that might even take over. So the first thing I would say, take care of yourself. It sounds very cliche, right? Because we hear that a lot, but really take care of yourself. Like, feed your soul, whatever that means to you, right? Is feeding your soul means being around your family, being around your friends, being around your loved ones. Don't fall into the idea of saving the world.
Yeah.
We're not saving anyone. And we both know, as two therapists, you can't save anyone, right?
You can only help yourself.
Exactly, right? You just show up for people, you just hold for them space, you show them the way, and it's up to them which direction to take.
Yes.
So if you felt you are falling into the trap of saving anyone, this is going to be a high contributor to the feeling of helplessness and hopelessness. So just be with that feeling, like really take care of you. So one thing I would say, like somatic, relating to the body, just literally hold your heart and hold your abdomen and just breathe, you know, and breathe, and even rock, whatever you need to like soothe yourself, right? In that situation, because we all go through that. Sometimes hopelessness and helplessness can trigger shame, right?
Yes.
Now, when that happens, I love Brené Brown's stuff around shame. Shame cannot take the light. It needs dark and secrecy.
Yes.
Go talk to a friend. Go say that. I feel helpless and hopeless and I don't know what to do. Done. The shame's done.
Yes.
Right?
You're getting
There's
support to be able to not stay in that silence anymore and feel ashamed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Find that voice, right? Like, the voice right now is the most important thing. At the beginning, it's going to come raw and like maybe tough and harsh. Eventually, we're going to find our way and our language to find more compassion and communicating the same needs, but in a more compassionate way, right? So that we can be received and our rights can be achieved in a faster way. So I would say that, like, self-care, the body, holding the body and rocking, whatever, self-soothe this. If there's shame, talk to a friend, talk to a trusted one, bring the shame to the light so it dissolves.
Yeah.
And trust that it's a cycle. It's going to move out of you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and that cycle is so important, you know, to recognize when, you know, you're getting into that space of, it could be heightened anxiety, as you said, heightened fear, like when if your child had, you know, an anger. So, you know, recognizing those emotions, holding them, right? And then being able to get into that place of self-soothing. Yeah, it sounds like what you're trying to say there.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So now we sort of talked a bit about, you know, how it's affected you, some things that you can share, you know, with others. I guess wanting to find out, okay, is there anything out there, you know, in the literature empirically that, you know, could sort of explain maybe, you know, what's happening, you know, with what's happening right now? Because right now, a lot of people are talking about defunding the police. A lot of riots, you know, are happening right now. So sort of the reaction, like extreme reaction to what's going on. So maybe we can talk about that negative piece, and then maybe we can switch to the positive a little later. Yeah. What do you think about those reactions that are happening right now?
I think people have the right to feel their anger and communicate it. And that's an extremely important part of transformation, right?
Yeah.
And again, as therapists, we know that if a client came and they are feeling shame or guilt, literally we want to piss them off. We want to take them to the next level. Once they feel the anger, they are closer to courage and other things, right? So I think that's what's happening. The danger would be getting stuck in that anger. Right? And just fuel it and be better. Right? Which means that the emotional pain is becoming contaminated. It's not serving the person anymore. Right? So I would say just pay attention if that anger turned into bitterness, and you notice that your emotional pain is contaminated. You need help if that happened. Because there is no real transformation on a societal level or a communal level from an emotional contaminated space. Pure anger is amazing. Do it, but move through it to the next level, to the courage, to ask for what you want, to negotiate, like the next level, right? And as much as what George went through, there's no excuse for what that police officer did. But again, if we held a wider perspective to the whole community, the white police officer also is a traumatized, terrified man.
So thinking about both perspectives of trauma.
Exactly, right? If we removed the lens, which is very hard right now because we are in the middle of it, to remove the separatedness ideology, us versus them. It's two faces of the same trauma. The oppressed and the oppressor. The predator and the victim, right? Like it's the two faces. And I wonder if cutting the funds for the police will help, or asking that the funds is directed to a regular mental health work with the police officers. And it becomes mandatory, right? I see great men from the police officers in my office as a therapist, and they do amazing work. And they come and they say, I want to feel this. I can't feel that anymore. I'm in a shock. I'm this, I'm that. And when they actually commit to their work, I see beautiful human beings. Right? So I don't ever see that the solution is taking away from something. It's relocating the resources into something that actually invests in the humanity of the people versus punishing them, right? So the punitive approach versus, you know what, maybe we don't need it for training for the body. We need training now for the soul, mental health now, people. Right?
I think you bring up a good point there. For that idea of, reallocating the funds rather than thinking about it as taking away funds from police. It's more reallocating the funds so that it can be used in an area that is lacking. A lot of research now has been talking about sort of the lack of access to mental health resources in the US. And I think that we are sort of spoiled here in Canada, or even in the Vancouver area, in the sense that, mental health resources are accessible mostly, to a wider population here. I find that individuals are saying, even through my practice, that, it's difficult to access those resources in the US because they've, I guess, migrated here to Canada, and they've had, really traumatic experiences there, in the sense that there are barriers to them accessing help, especially within, impoverished neighborhoods where the access is low, right? So it's definitely challenging there. So that idea of the reallocating is definitely something individuals have been talking about and championing for, the defund the police sort of situation.
Yes. And even like taking it to a bigger perspective, even since the COVID and the isolation and how much mental health problems are coming to the surface, what you see in your office too, right? I've never seen what I'm seeing right now in my office with my clients before.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Like, I would say that my practice has blossomed just in the last 2 months. I've tripled clientele, and it's not a moment of celebration for me because I know, the reason that's happening is because of the climate that we're in at this point, and I'm happy to be a professional to help. But at the same time, it's these people are hurting.
Yes, they are totally right. And there's many articles now that they're saying the next pandemic is going to be mental health. Right. So we are really right now as humanity are pressured. So there's no distractions anymore.
Yeah.
Everything is in our face like that. You can't distract, right? The man that was a workaholic to run away from a marriage that isn't working, now he's self-isolating with his wife.
Oh,
and
yes.
to figure that out, right?
Yes.
And our big issues of injustice and racism and sexism are also coming to the surface for the same reason, right? So just going through our cycles, getting the anger to remove the shame out of the way and thinking about the next level and move from a punitive perspective to a different level of consciousness. Now, what is the consciousness that include all of us as humanity? We can't live without each other. Person of color, black person, white person, Asian, like we can't live without each other, period, really, right?
Yeah. Definitely. We need each other, right? So that idea of thinking of a collective, being able to live and exist together and help each other, and be able to fight against, these injustices and discrimination that's in the world. And I think, you started talking about that last aspect that I wanted to talk about, sort of, how do we move forward? What can we do to get to that next place? Where, we can reduce some of the trauma, we can reduce some of the pain and the hurt, and I think you touched on it there in the sense of, thinking of a global, wider community of people who are in this together to fight this, and to be able to get to a place where we can recognize the need for each other, right?
Yes. Yes, 110%. To be honest, I believe that the next step would be people gathering together as community, right? Call that group therapy for somebody to hold a space for the pain without judgment, to moderate the conversation. But that would be the next level, witnessing each other pain and transformation. Because there's something magical happens when you are seen in your pain without being judged. Right. And find other people's looks and empathetic looks of like, whoa, that's harsh. I'm so sorry. Right. And understanding that the global phenomenon right now is going to trigger our own personal traumas from our childhood. The moments of helplessness, the moments of hopelessness, whether that was massive abuse or was little things of emotional neglect, it will trigger that, whether we want it or not. Right. And then if you have access to your therapist, amazing, go and work through that. If you don't have access, talk to a friend, right? Group therapy is way more accessible, as you know, Trisha, than one-on-one, but there is more need of that right now, right? We need people to get together because the energy of people together make the transformation even more long-lasting and stronger.
Definitely. And, you talk about group therapy and, it may not be group therapy that I'm seeing now, but I'm seeing a lot of organizations sort of bringing people together to have these conversations. Some are more volatile than others, but I've been a part of both. Ones where it's gotten so emotionally charged, the sense that people are speaking what they have to say, others are shutting them down, but at least the conversation is happening. And then at the other end where people are, being able to share and others are listening, like you're talking about, so that witnessing piece, and being able to be there empathetically, right, for them. And also, being able to say, okay, I recognize my part, in this, and I want to change, like, help me, how can I do this? So having those transformative conversations too, where individuals are recognizing, the roles that they're playing as well within it, and you're seeing the transformation in front of you.
That's amazing. Yes, and I think that's an amazing start, right? But also, me and you know that this conversation can be re-traumatizing if there's no professional to actually monitor the nervous systems of people, right? So I am 110% biased to our profession. That especially trauma-trained therapists, not trauma-informed even, trauma-trained, because you're trauma-trained, I'm trauma-trained. Yes. We know how to look for things, non-verbals, right? People don't need to talk much. It's an eye look. It's a shutdown in the facial expressions that tells me that, whoa, that person had checked out. Now, anything we're saying gonna trigger them. Take them out, have a conversation with another co-facilitator. So I am biased that these conversations need to be held by trauma-trained therapists so that people will not be re-traumatized and they are taking actually a longer time in healing.
Yeah.
Because re-traumatization is like a broken bone and you keep hitting on it, right? Now it's going to take longer to heal versus like, oh, somebody hit the bone that is broken. Let me take you outside, talk about what happened and take care of it before bringing you back to that zone.
It's a very controlled space, as you said. I wait even to support them even more within that space. I completely agree with you in the sense that counseling and psychotherapy is the best way to unpack deep traumatic things, and it has been traumatic for a lot of people. So yes, if you are out there YouTube fans, are a person who has had a lot of traumatic triggering at this point in time, please contact a therapist, and we'll be leaving Samar's contact information below, so you can access her. You can access me if you're in the Vancouver area, and if not, we can even put a link there for someone. You can look up a therapist in your area as well. But yeah, thank you so much, Samar, for sharing with us and highlighting some of those things that are happening within our world, and sort of giving us tips on how we can I guess prepare ourselves and move into these conversations.
Thank you, Trisha. What about you? How did this whole thing, this movement, affected you in your practice? Man, and again, we're two different people, right? I'm a person of color. The effect is very different, as like you are in the midst of the fire yourself, right?
Yes, definitely. As a person of color, I would say that I was affected a little differently, and I say that to say, I am of Jamaican descent. Okay, so my forefathers were slaves, and I sort of grew up within that, I guess, sphere of knowing that. I'm also mixed, so I have European descent as well. So my forefathers were also slave owners, right? And I'm also of East Indian descent. So, so I have
that's a very interesting mix.
Yeah, so I have all of those, things going on. So for me, I looked at it as a sense of, okay, this is happening, but is it happening to me and my people? That's the first thing that came to me. I'll be honest. That was my reaction to it. And I said, is this an African American issue, right? The first thing for me is I tend to externalize outside of me, so I don't take it on. But then I had to check myself and say, you know what? We are all Black people. If our brother is going through something, it's for me to be able to look at that and say, okay, how can I help, right? Have I contributed to that? And recognizing maybe the differences, right, that are between our people. So yes, I'm from the Caribbean. We fought for our freedom, right? So we don't have that sense of necessarily helplessness or hopelessness, because we're a fighting people, right? We fought for our freedom, and we got it. We won, right? Sure. So, the African American experience, from what I've read so far, and I had to dig, to find this information, they weren't able to fight for that. They were definitely downtrodden. And even after they were so-called free, they were beaten continuously, in the sense of they tried to rebuild, and that was torn down. And, when we can see with media, the constant, beating down of their humanity, just that experience. It's like a continuous experience for them. And I don't have that experience, right?
Systematic oppression, right?
Exactly. The
breaking all the time, squishing.
Exactly.
Keep going until it's internalized. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't have that experience. So it was difficult for me to understand the anger. It was difficult for me to understand the frustration, because I was definitely of the party that was like, why can't you move forward? Why can't they move forward? And I had to definitely look and say, okay, what is really happening here? Educate myself, and recognize, okay, these are the similarities, these are the differences, and be a champion for them. Be able to open those conversations and look within myself for my own biases, and recognize, okay, I might have perpetuated this idea of needing to get over things, right? Yeah. And once I checked that, then I was able to be like, okay, what can I do? How can I help this movement of the discrimination, the prejudice and such. And then be like, okay, open conversations, what we're doing right now, and be able to even, as you said, do some self-care for myself, because I was also reminded of times when I was, treated unfairly or discriminated against. And, it did bring up memories for me as well. Right. And I had to deal with those. I had to deal with those. I had days when I was crying in my bed, right? Frustrated, talking to my husband, and like, why is this continuing to happen? And, I feel like here in Canada, it's more of a covert,
Yes, it's not in your face because
in your
in the States. Yes. And I think that will take us to an important point of like noticing how do you cope with the stress, fight, flight, freeze, or frown.
Yes.
What do you do, right? Like for you sit down and cry. I get mad. Yes. Like I'm like, what's happening? Why am I doing this? It's unreasonable, right?
Yes.
And I remember that, that's my coping. I fight. That's what I know. When I'm under that level of stress or trauma, my first response is fighting until I'm like, okay, there's something wrong. I don't even know what it is. And sitting with myself to access the tears that you accessed, right?
Yes.
So even that knowledge will give people power to understand that which one of you do you need to run right now and talk about another topic and act as if nothing is happening?
Exactly.
And give yourself that break. Or do you need to fight and advocate and move forward? Or do you need to freeze, like do nothing? It's okay too.
Yeah.
So let's both of us give people permissions today to cope.
Yes, definitely.
Right? There's no guilt
break,
anyway. Yes, there is no guilt. Please cope in whatever way you need to cope. Right? And it's thrown people pleasing.
Yes.
You need to please people to feel better. Whatever you need right now. It's a survival space, right? So permission is so important. Yeah.
For sure. And yeah, that's definitely where I found myself. And, I think, as you said, I had to go through that to be able to, become triumphant in the end in saying, okay, this is how I feel. Now what can I do? Because I'm also that person. I feel my feelings and then I'm like, okay, I can't stay in it. I need to figure out, okay, what am I going to do then? Right. So after you've been able to feel the feelings and cope in a sense, then if you're within that space where you're feeling strong enough, then you can identify, okay, how can I join this movement? What can I do? Right. And I know I'm not a person to go out there with a plaque for sure. I'm definitely the behind the scenes person. So, find your voice, find what you can do out there to be a part of this movement, whether it's posting something on Facebook, whether it's having conversations with people one-on-one, you're also doing the work, right?
I agree, totally agree. But look at you, Trisha, you are actually taking a flag and like doing a YouTube channel and reaching out to us in Vancouver. Hey, I have a YouTube channel. Do you want to come and have a conversation online? That's a big deal. That's a leader movement. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So Samar, how can people find you? Because as you said, you're holding space for people, whether that's through group therapy or that's one-on-one therapy, how can people find you? How can they contact you if they need, to access
So my website is www.wellinstitute.com. And they can always email me. We have a chat box there for ease. Or people can just email me samar@wellinstitute.com. And there will be group therapies actually starting in September. So there is a preparation right now happening for it. Yes. And then it's going to be trauma trained therapists holding that space for people so we can all transform together.
Wonderful.
So yeah.
And I'm sure you'll give me that information. I'll put it down in the description.
Absolutely. So, that too.
You can access it there. Wonderful. Well, it was so great to talk with you, Samar.
Trisha, same. Thank you for inviting me for this conversation, really. And truly, thanks for the leadership. Admire it so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready because I didn't know who I was. And I think that came from like having to assimilate and like hanging out with primarily white people and like not really being proud of being Black. And I think that comes from, like I said, like the environment I grew up in and dealing with obviously like racism and trying to fit in with all the other people and like wanting more than anything to be white, which just seems so crazy to think about now. Like it's sad. It's like if I knew what I know now back then, things would be so different. You know, like I wish I could tell like my younger self that I was beautiful, but it caused a lot of pain. So yeah, I was just like going through the motions, not knowing what was going on and not really able to heal because of that.
Welcome to another episode of Meta Transitions. Today we have as our guest Betty Mulat. Welcome, Betty.
Thank you for having me, Trisha.
Yes. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
My name is Betty, and I am the founder of the Vancouver Black Therapy and Advocacy Foundation, which I recently founded in early June. And it started off as a GoFundMe to provide therapy for 10 Black folks free of charge. And now it's been incorporated into a foundation as of the other week. So I'm hoping it can become like a hub for Black folks to keep them connected with mental health resources in the Lower Mainland. And also I'm the co-founder of Newsy Collective, which is a music collective dedicated to providing a platform for specifically Black folks, Black trans folks, queer folks, non-binary folks within the Vancouver electronic music scene. So through Newsy, our main goal is to reclaim the Black roots of house and techno and electronic music and also rap. And we just book artists from out of town and local artists and try and merge the two to expose Vancouver to Black culture. And I'm also a painter and a DJ and producer, and I produce mainly like electronic music. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Lovely. Oh man, this is amazing to have you here and to be able to speak to, what's been going on within our community at this point. Yeah. So let us start maybe by you sharing with us your story.
My story. So I was born in Vancouver or in Burnaby. I've lived here my whole life. Grew up with a single mom. I'm first generation, so my whole family's from Ethiopia. So yeah, growing up here was interesting with the home life being super traditional, and then going to school and like having to assimilate and like being one of the only Black kids like for most of my life. So yeah, it was a difficult journey, I would say, like coming into myself. Like I definitely wasn't always who I am today. Like today I feel like I know who I am. Like I am my true self. Like I have love for myself, but it wasn't always the case, unfortunately. And I think a lot of it had to do with just being a product of the environment you grew up in. So yeah, I started doing the work that I do a few years ago. I decided I'll probably skip out like my whole life story at the beginning, but it comes in between. I would say like my biggest transition was definitely probably a few years after I finished high school. I felt like I was kind of like stuck in a rut, just like working retail and like, didn't really have like a connection to many folks in my community. I was just like trying to find myself, like wasn't in school, wasn't really doing anything, didn't have very many passions, just kind of like took it day by day. Was in like a lot of relationships I found that like weren't really serving me either. And I wasn't really in therapy at that point because I started therapy when I was 15 and it was like free as it was funded by the ministry.
Great.
Which was great. But then, you don't choose your therapist, you kind of just get whoever. So, I mean, that helped for sure. But I think, like being a teenager, you're not really ready for change. You don't go to therapy being like, I need to heal. You don't even know what your traumas are and like what, like what is wrong with you. Like I was just going because I was like, okay, I need help. Obviously I struggle, but like, I wasn't actually willing to accept change or like hear the truth. So I felt like, the years of therapy that I spent helped to a T, but like, you know, I wasn't ready because I didn't know who I was. And I think that came from like having to assimilate and like hanging out with primarily white people and like not really being proud of being Black. And I think that comes from, like I said, like the environment I grew up in and dealing with obviously like racism and trying to fit in with all the other people and like wanting more than anything to be white. Which just seems so crazy to think about now. Like, it's sad. It's like, if I knew what I know now back then, things would be so different. You know, like, I wish I could tell, like, my younger self that I was beautiful. But it caused a lot of pain. So, yeah, I was just, like, going through the motions, not knowing what was going on and not really able to heal because of that. And then I think I would say, like, my biggest transition as, like, I feel like it sounds cheesy, but was going to college. Like, I enrolled at Langara and I started to educate myself a bit more, started to meet a bit more like-minded folks. I started to get more into political engagement and just like started taking courses that like resonated with me, because obviously that's like not an option when you're in high school. And the more I became educated, the more I became empowered, I'd say. Because it's like, you know, I didn't grow up in a household where like my family were praising activists or anything. Like, they were dealing with their own stuff as immigrants. So like, I didn't have a lot of knowledge about Black history myself. So it came from like, learning more about the history and like starting to surround myself with more Black people and like just like really realizing that like I needed to like start the process of healing. Like, I had a bit more knowledge and I knew like all this self-hatred that I had came from not accepting who I was, but I feel like I was made to feel that way. So now that I knew that like that was the issue, it changed everything for me. Like, it really did. Like, starting to like, be more in touch with my people. Seeing a Black person on the street, like, what's up? Like, you know, and like,
I know, like, I'm listening to your story now, and I can't help but reflect, you know, on sort of my own experience as well. But if I were to reflect on what I heard you say, it's sort of like, you know, the idea of growing up, you know, within a white dominant society, you know, made you unable to recognize who you were as a person.
100%.
Not unable to, you know, figure out your identity as a Black person living within a white society. And it sounds like that was a challenge for you to be able to identify, you know, where do I go without understanding where you came from. And it sounds like, you know, when you got to the place of university where you're able to empower yourself with education, that's sort of where, you know, your journey sort of started, in the sense where you're like, okay, I was able to gain that information through educating yourself. And then you were able to, you know, get to the place where you could make some positive change within yourself. And then now out to the world. Do I have that right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Exactly. Because it was so isolating. And I know most Black folks who grew up in BC probably feel this way, you know, and like, I don't really have a family either, except like my mom. So like, it's more isolating because I don't have like, I didn't have like Black figures in my direct life to like look up to, or who were there for like mentorship or anything either. So that definitely contributed to that isolation, I think. And that, like, at least I think maybe growing up in a neighborhood with more Black kids would have helped. But that wasn't the case. So that was definitely it. And then, I think once you start to love yourself a bit more, you start to like seek the help that you need, you know, for like mental health and stuff too. Like I realized I had some other stuff going on as well that like needed to be dealt with, and like a lot of traumas, and like, you know, doing like these like healing nights and stuff too in Vancouver, where it was just like mainly like Black and Indigenous folks who would gather together and just like talk and discuss like our experiences, but like in like a safe space, really also made me realize like I wasn't alone. Like hearing all these other people talk about echoing your experiences was crazy, you know? Like,
Yeah, it sounds like community was a huge thing for you to be able to, you know, recognize I'm not alone.
oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Community like changed my life like fully. And then I also around the same time like started going to like pretty like intensive like trauma therapy. So then that helped a lot too. 100%. Like I never actually have seen a Black therapist. I didn't even know there were Black therapists in Vancouver until I like started doing the research. But like I guess this therapist has like a pretty anti-racist approach and like does the work. So that helped because I was able to talk about my experiences and obviously other stuff. Like it's not like racism is the only trauma I've dealt with, but all my other things I've struggled with too, and being able to talk about that and like feel heard and realize I was doing a lot of things to like sabotage myself consistently. And that comes from like not respecting yourself.
Right.
But because you aren't respected, you know?
So counseling also played a huge role. It sounds like, you know, in the idea, in you being able to explore and be able to unearth, you know, maybe some other things that may have been, you know, an issue for you, as you said, traumas, so racism, along with some of these other things. And it sounds like that was able to help you to come into your own and to, you know, be able to hone yourself and what it is that you wanted to do in life.
100%. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing
No
so
worries.
far. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, and you know, I feel like, you know, I'm gaining an understanding of who you are as a person. So thank you for sharing so honestly.
No worries.
Yes.
No.
All right. So the next question has to do with at what point did you sort of recognize a change within yourself? You talked about education, you talked about therapy, you talked about community. Having gone through sort of those avenues or mediums, at what point did you recognize that you were changing or that you were transforming?
Probably like about 2 years ago, 2 years into being in therapy like consistently on a weekly basis, I started to realize like my relationships evolving and becoming, I don't know, just like setting firmer boundaries and just like having a lot more self-respect and like not tolerating like disrespect and whatnot that I would before, like in the workplace, for example, when people would be racist and whatnot, like I just started walking out like and I quit on the fly versus back in the day, just swallow it and repress it and then keep on going. I also noticed by like doing a lot of like activism and like community oriented work within the community. It was interesting because it's like I'm really good at performing. Like I'm pretty private about my own struggles and internal battles, and I don't talk about personal things. So I feel like a lot of people think I'm always doing well and like don't know like a lot of things, and it's not on purpose. I think it's like a survival thing. I did it my whole life, so I still do it now. So yeah, people would just be like, you're killing it, you're doing so well, you're doing so much. And like, you know, when you are organizing events and you're like bringing people together, people like see you as like a leading figure, a leader. And I was like, well, like that's actually how people perceive me. Like, I don't quite see that, but like, I was like, I think that is the case. So like, it's not that I don't believe it. Yeah. It's more that like, I myself was unable to like see these changes until, you know, other people would point it out. And even seeing people from like the Ethiopian community and stuff, to be honest, like growing up when you are like such a traumatized child, like you act out in ways that make you like difficult. So I was a difficult kid, very difficult. And then, you know, seeing a lot of the people from the community now who like used to be judgmental, being like, yeah, like congratulating me and saying like I've changed so much and like, you know, saying that they see like the progress is like also interesting. I'm like, oh, I think it's because I'm a lot more like composed and calmer and I'm not as angry anymore. That's all it is, you know? It's like anger, I started to realize like how the anger I had inside was like manifesting in all these different ways. Once the anger started to subside and like I started to deal with it and you realize it's just sadness and it's depression, like that's when I really realized I was like, I'm at like a pivotal point right now where I have to either keep working really hard on like this healing process or I can be like, you did it and chill, you know?
It sounds like, you got positive affirmation from people around you that really helped you to be able to look within yourself to say, okay, is what they're saying true? And then you were able to be like, yeah, I think that that's true. In the sense that you were able to identify, that you were changing because you were not only doing positive things in the community, but you were also recognizing a change within your own self in the way that you responded to, maybe adversity or things that came at you in a less angry way. And, also thinking about, again, cultural roots, right? And a lot of times people are like, as individuals, you're not normally seen as the best within your own community.
100%,
right?
yeah.
So to get, again, positive affirmation from your own community, I can see how that would speak volumes for you
For
as well.
sure. Yeah, it's a big thing. I mean, I learned to disregard it, right? I was like, whatever, they'll think what they want to think. And like, I think a lot of ethnic communities are the same way, obviously. But yeah, I just found it interesting. I was like, oh, wow, there like really is change. And also like started to realize that like, I can keep pushing myself even further because like nothing bad is going to happen. Because one thing my therapist has told me is that like I would settle a lot for things and like, not always be cautious and whatnot. Because like I didn't really know if I would even have much of a future. I think it's like a trauma reaction. And then, once I like realized I needed to get over that mentality, that's when I actually started living my life and starting things, working on art, working hard, like working on a work ethic and like really just like honing my craft with music and, like believing in myself to like start things like the fund and stuff. Because before I didn't think about the future ever. I didn't know what that would look like,
Yeah. So you became hopeful.
Yeah.
Hopeful. And it sounds like, resilient throughout this whole process. And, again, getting into that place of wanting to share that with others and to help others to get, that experience too, through the organizations that you're a part of and through this fund, that you created in a sense, you were able to go through therapy. So wanting others to be able to have that experience too. It's amazing. It's very inspiring.
Thank you. For sure. Yeah. The thing with therapy is like, it's it's not affordable. It's hard to access. And like, I'm not rich by any means. I just was like determined to heal and would like, do it even once a month, like, and that would work. But I realized like when you have so many friends who are still struggling and hurting and like you see your old self in, like through them and that like, they need to start the healing process, but like how, like there's nothing in Vancouver for Black folks. Like there's no specific resources or services. So it sucks to see that. And it sucks to see that with family and stuff too. And I was like, well, why don't we try something like Oprah style where we can just like make this, public and like try to get everyone the help that they need. Obviously we can't do the whole city, but like, even one person I think is a big thing. So
I remember in the beginning you said that it started off as something really small.
Yeah.
And then it sort of blew up.
Yeah.
I remember, when, you first contacted me and, you're like, oh, it's just going to be a $10,000 thing. And I only want to help 10 people, and maybe you could share the numbers with us today. Where's the fund at now?
I think we're at like 135,000, but that was yesterday.
Yes.
And it just keeps going up by the day. And also now that we've been incorporated as a nonprofit like foundation, I'm hoping that will help us get more donations from like companies and whatnot too. So yeah, I'm in shock. Like it's become a full-time job now, and I'm like really passionate about it because like something that is really dear to me is like advocating for people. So I feel like this is, it's a passion project, and I can't believe the support it's received too, and how it just keeps going. Because I'm sure like you feel the same way about like the BLM movement, how like it's trending now, but like who knows how long
Yeah,
you know?
definitely. So it's like seizing the moment, seizing the day, and recognizing, okay, I started this as something small, but it blew up into something big, and wanting to sort of use that platform and use the resources in the right way in giving individuals access to counseling, and using it in a larger scale as a not-for-profit agency. Hopefully, you know, I hope it sticks around because a lot of people need, you know, that type of help.
For sure. I hope so too. Trying to, come up with ways to make it as sustainable as possible. So, yeah. So I wanted to ask you about your transition journey.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. So maybe specifically with maybe Black advocacy.
Yeah.
I would say that I am the person in the background.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not much of an activist, if you want to call it that, like with, you know, the picket stuff and walking on the street. So I wouldn't be one of the people that you would see downtown. I'm more of the behind the scenes person. So I do counseling work where I talk to a lot of people in that way and help them to change their mindset about different things. I'm also the person who will post a lot of things on social media, you know, about what's going on and helping people to be able to, again, think differently about what's happening. I'm the person who I love to have one-on-one small group conversations with individuals, again, to help with changing the mindset and having difficult conversations, right? But I didn't get to that place, you know, right away. I would say my history is I'm Jamaican. And definitely Jamaica was colonized. But I come from a line of people who fought for our freedom in Jamaica. So we're a fighting, resilient people in a sense. So, you know, when I came here, to say that I didn't experience racism in Jamaica because it's predominantly a Black society or country. We do, you know, our motto is out of many one people because it's a very mixed population. So you could say that it's an island of mulattoes, if you want to call it that, right? We're very mixed people. So, you know, I might look Black, but I'm mixed with a lot of different people. So my mom is half East Asian and half Ashanti tribe Ghana, right? Which is the tribe that broke away from their slave owners and started an army in Jamaica and fought to free slaves. So a very rich history. Whereas my dad, my last name is Manhertz. My maiden name is Manhertz, which is a German name.
Yeah, it sounds good.
So, you know, my forefathers were also slave owners, right? So it's very interesting and intricate in Jamaica where, you know, we're very open to, I guess, everyone and embracing of a lot of different cultures. Our food and everything, you know, is sort of mixed with Spanish and French and African and all of that. So our culture is very much like that. So, you know, very much learning that I'm an empowered Black person, right? So coming from that perspective, but also being able to identify that, you know, we were able to fight for our freedom and, you know, we can embrace these people as a part of us. So now coming to, you know, North America and having sort of that ideal, you know, it wasn't a huge challenge for me to sort of transition into a space where I saw other cultures and, you know, to be able to identify, okay, yes, I'm different from them, but it doesn't mean that I'm less than in a sense, right? So that was very important for me to be able to recognize that. But at the same time, you know, I experienced racism too, right? And it was very different for me because I was like, was that racism? You know, because it's very different from sort of the George Floyd experience in America,
100%.
right? Because in Canada, it's very covert, right? And I guess I can share an experience with you. There's a job interview that I went on. So I got a lot of interviews because, again, my last name is German.
Right, yeah.
So I got a lot of interviews. So I would go into an interview and, you know, the people would be very surprised that I'm the person coming for the interview.
Visibly too, I'm sure. Like, no shame.
Like, yeah, extremely surprised. So they would come to like the foyer, they'd look around and they'd be like, okay, I guess she's not here yet.
Oh my
And they'd go back
God.
in. Yeah. And, you know, they'd come back out and then they'd be like, are you so-and-so? And I'd be like, yes, I am actually.
Oh my
And I'd
God.
be very perky and I'd go in because I'm very unassuming. I am not really even thinking that, you know, they are thinking anything bad, right?
Right.
So I'd go in, have the interview, all of that, you know, towards the end of it. So it's not my qualifications. I have everything that they need.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, I'm not what they want visually, you know? And I'd be confused at the end because I would be presenting my best self because, again, confident Black woman, right? And, you know, I wouldn't get these jobs and it would be very confusing and discouraging for me afterwards. And then, you know, you meet again, as you said, in community with other Black people.
Yeah.
And then they tell you the same stories. And you're like, huh.
Wait, what?
This doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know, we're all qualified to do these jobs, sometimes overqualified, right, to do these jobs, and we're still not getting them. And it's at that point that you have to recognize, okay, there has to be a reason. And, you know, the culminating reason between all of us is that we're all Black. Right. And it makes you pause and say, okay, I came from Jamaica where I had all the opportunities and I wouldn't have this as something that would go against me. But here within this society, it is very important and again, very different. So that made me recognize, okay, this will be a difficult situation for me and for my family. And we had to figure out, okay, how are we going to work around this? Are we going to allow this to keep us down or are we going to rise above it and keep working harder? And that work ethic, like you talked about, you know, became a big thing where, you know, my dad would say, you know, it's important for you to, you know, keep striving, keep working hard, don't give up sort of thing, and not to allow it to discourage you. So that's sort of my story.
Yeah. I mean, I love to hear that you grew up in a space where you're celebrated and empowered, and it's sad when you come to Canada and that just people try and strip that away from you and rob that from you, and it's like, no, not happening. Like, and like your father was saying, I totally get that. Like, so many, especially of like the older generation of like African, Caribbean immigrants, like, you know, their whole thing is to just rise above it. Like, they just fight through it. They don't even complain about racism because they don't have the ability to do it. All they can do is fight. So
and that's sort of, I feel like, was where I think I wasn't doing the movement justice, in the sense where I was quiet. Right. I wasn't speaking up. I wasn't, you know, talking about how unjust this is.
Sure.
It was more, yes, I dealt with it, but again, I'm going to rise above it. But not recognizing that there are others whose stories are not like mine, right? And, you know, it's important for us as a community to be able to advocate for others
100%.
And to be able to, you know, be vocal about, you know, the injustices that happen, especially, as you said, within different organizations, within our workspaces, within our, you know, day-to-day, you know, strivings with others. It's important to be able to speak out. And, you know, I think that's what this Black Lives Movement helped me with.
For sure.
To be able to find a voice, to be able to say different things and to not just keep quiet.
Totally. And I know, like, everyone, you know, in this movement, like, not everyone can be at the front lines either, right? Like, we're already processing our own traumas as Black people, and like, being at the front lines is not for everyone. It's too much for some people too. And like, you know, that's when we need the allies there, because it's like, like, I understand people deal with it differently, and I think, like, just by us existing in general, that's enough of like a statement, you know. And it's like, when some people feel like they have to stay posting, like, I'm the type where I'm just like posting 24/7, but I also have like a very active social media presence. So like, I feel like I also am like obligated to like keep, you know, informing the audience. But then for people who don't too, it's like, well, you know, it's like some people don't even have the capacity, or some people are like realizing as they go. So like, yeah, I know as Black people, we should like never feel guilty too about not being able to be at the front lines or be as loud as possible, you know?
Definitely. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've shared so far, both of us.
Yeah.
Just wanting to maybe get from you, like, while we wrap up,
Yeah.
what are some tips that you can give to, our Black community out there, or even individuals that are watching? How could they help, with the movement? And what tips can you give to them if they're going through sort of a struggle?
So I would say, in terms of like advice I have for any Black folks out there right now, it's just to like go at your own pace. Don't feel obligated to do anything you don't want to. You know what I mean? Like take time to like replenish yourself and like nourish yourself. And I know it's really hard, but it's like, our community as a whole are like specifically struggling at this moment, but it's like we still have to go through the motions of life. We still have obligations we have to meet. We still have bills to pay. And it's hard. It's hard to feel like you have to keep up when like, there's so much going on in the world. And we're in the midst of a revolution. So it's like, it's not an easy time and a pandemic. So I think Black folks just need to be extra gentle with themselves right now. And like, I'm learning it too as I go, but it's just like, it's okay to feel like you're not getting as much done right now because you can't focus. It's okay to just rest and lay down all day if that's what you need to do. Cause like, yeah, this is not the norm right now, what we're experiencing and what we're dealing with. And like, I think we're collectively all mourning and grieving too. So just like sitting with that and taking it easy on ourselves and like, not owing anyone anything,
Yeah.
Like we really don't owe anyone anything right now.
So it's sort of just reducing that anxiety, finding a sense of stillness, and, figuring out ways to care for ourselves. It's a huge, huge thing that we need right now, and finding capacity to do, what you can within this moment. And as you said, not feeling guilty.
Totally. And also not being afraid to ask for help because people want to help right now. Like I'm saying, this fund wouldn't exist if it wasn't for people having the time, considering like it's also a pandemic and also wanting to give away resources and also donate. So like people, like being public, if you need help for something, like all eyes are on us right now. So like it's okay to ask for the help that you need.
Definitely.
No shame.
Yes. Thank you so much for being with us,
Thanks
Betty.
for having me.
Yes. Okay. Last question. How can people contact you? If they need help from this fund, how do they contact you? And, for your other maybe organizations or initiatives, how can they reach you?
So for the fund, currently what I did was for like intakes and accessing the funds, I posted an intake form on the GoFundMe and through social media the first few days of the fund, and I got like an overwhelming amount of intake requests. So I closed that and then so it's closed. So right now I'm doing 25 recipients for 20 hours. That's the first round. Obviously there's gonna be excess funding. So like I wanna see how this goes, what we're left with, as I can't like spend the money all at once.
Makes sense.
And then doing wait lists as well for the other people. So I kind of prioritized it as this fund prioritizes disabled and like LGBTQ2I folks. That was like the main priority right now. And also just people who are in dire need, if they messaged or in the intake and like mentioned it was like extremely urgent, that was the thing. I believe everyone deserves therapy regardless, like Black people right now, but that's how it's working. All updates will be on my Instagram, which is Queen of Radio Silence. So I just periodically post graphics with the latest updates for the fund, and also GoFundMe at Vancouver Black Therapy and Advocacy Fund.com for the website as well. And if you ever want to check out Newsy, which is the music collective that I run, it's Newsy Collective on Instagram, and then our website is newsy.ca. So we keep everyone informed there with our upcoming events in the city.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We are going to put Betty's contact information in our description below, so please go check it out there. We are so happy that you joined us. We're so happy to have Betty with us. Please like, share, and subscribe this video, and we'll see you next time.